film like Дэдпул is always an exciting project because the scripts usually have a lot of action, a lot of different locations. Often they have CG characters plus set extensions. So there's a wide range of visual effects. We're working on about 1,200 shots. It's a crazy, I guess, Rubik's Cube of choices that we have.
Let us go talk to the professor.
McAvoy or Stewart? These timelines are so confusing.
After that insane car wreck, Colossus' goal in the whole thing is to bring Дэдпул back to the mansion. So he cuffs Дэdпул, and Дэdпул, who's a character who can grow back body parts, the natural solution is just to cut his arm off.
Oh my God, nasty.
When he gets shot, he bleeds. When he gets stabbed, he bleeds. When he cuts his arm off, he bleeds a lot.
Oh, there's the money shot, baby. Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret.
It's hilarious, and I love it, because we'd have blood spraying, and we're like, too much? And she's like, no, go for it. We're like, all right. And I'm like, you guys, he's already spilled 2 bodies worth of blood in this one moment of the movie, but we just keep going, and he's dead 4 times over.
Tylenol PM?
You'd stick that where you stuck the Bactine. I raided my stash of wisdom tooth Percocet, and I am orbiting fucking Saturn right now.
We always wanted to do the baby hand coming out. At first we did this little hand, and then we're like, no, let's just make it more translucent and viscousy and just play it up a little bit.
Am I crazy? Or is your hand really small?
We see a couple shots as the hands go, and the best is when he's caressing Al, and she's blind, so she doesn't know what it is.
When will he grow up and see benefits of becoming X-Men?
One of the great challenges in making a film out of a comic book is that you have to represent the physical look of these superheroes.
Colossus, the way he was in the past movies, he's really a guy with shiny skin. But in the comics, he's this 7 or 8 foot tall fucking behemoth of a character. And that's why he's so cool.
It was kind of hard to get used to imagining Colossus. I got to look at the sketches of how they were thinking to make him, so I kind of had to build him in my head and put him next to me.
That's a real challenge because he's very interactive with the other characters in the movie, especially in the fight scenes in the 3rd act. So we used every trick we could to basically get those pieces to really fit together.
Anytime Colossus appears on camera in this film, there's quite a lot of elements that go into it. We end up shooting the first take generally with Andre, who's sort of our actor stand-in.
He's got this helmet that has a, I don't know what you would call it, like an antenna and a ball on it, and he looks like a Teletubby in it. That was hard though, because you're supposed to look at the ball and not at his face, because his face is supposed to be where the ball is.
Tim really had a vision about what Colossus was for him, so he's a really interesting mashup of 4 different people. Andre was the actor on set.
And then we had one actor whose face was used as the original base model for the look of his face. Then we had another actor whose facial movements were used when Colossus speaks. And then there's the final actor who is the voiceover actor who brought Colossus's voice to life.
Just promise.
Yeah, I'll be on the lookout for the next 4 moments.
Digital Domain has a great system called MOVA, which is a facial capture system. You paint on the face and it creates thousands and thousands of little tracking markers. At that point, you get a piece of geometry that captures the movement and acting of the actor.
Colossus is a known character in the Marvel Universe, and what makes him tricky to handle in the CG world is that he is shiny.
Oh! Because he's made completely out of a metallic surface, we also have to do these reflection passes in the environment. Whenever we finish shooting our Colossus motion capture actor, we end up going in and we shoot clean plates, which just allow us to have all the information that we need for when Colossus moves around. And then we also shoot reflective gray balls and reflective silver balls that allows the visual effects artist to understand where all the lighting sources are coming from. And then on top of that, we shoot HDRIs with a still camera. And so we'll go in and they'll set up a still camera and they'll shoot all these panoramic passes at multiple exposures. And those are to have reflection information so that when the visual effects artists put the sort of chrome body onto Colossus, they use that HDRI information along with their reflection passes to get sort of all of that mapping of the environment around him, because he's essentially a giant mirror that moves around. background. And that allows Jonathan and our sort of VFX team to make this seamless transition into this metallic person that moves like a human and acts like a human, but has this very otherworldly form.
We're using this 3D camera system that we'll have in all of his shots where we can capture all the action that happens around him.
Tim was very specific in the type of metal look that he wanted Colossus to have. So he has fine scratches and just dress marks throughout his entire body.
He's got a lot of like little nicks and scratches. There's a really cool like rainbow effect on his shoulders, the way that metal anodizes and tarnishes. It's just really beautiful when the light rolls over it.
We will make an X-Men of you yet. Wait.
Enjoy your weekend.
Weekend? Back up. Weekend?
The punch bowl scene is the ultimate point of transformation for Дэдпул, turning from Wade Wilson into Дэdpul. And we didn't want people to think that he was burned and scarred from the fires that were taking place, but it was actually part of the transformation.
For the transformation, the visual effects team then needed to reverse engineer and design a mutating effect that looked like it could become his final look.
Our reference for that was like mushroom spores exploding, and then we took some footage of decaying meat and played that in reverse, and you could see all the foam coming up from it and getting eaten away, and it's just disgusting.
Right up Main Street.
Дэdpul's mask presented its own set of challenges. Originally, as it was being designed, the hope had been that his eyebrows and facial expressions would in some way show through and be captured on live action. But as the design was coming together, everybody realized that with the hard shell that was around his skull area, that there was no way his expressions would show through at all. The team at Weta was available to step in and take on over 250 facial shots of Дэdpul.
I'm touching myself tonight.
And just do a marvelous job bringing together the smart-ass portion of his character and his quizzical looks and his angry looks. They really gave nuances to his character that just would not have been there. In our climactic Act 3, our heroes approach a scrapyard to save Wade's girlfriend, and they enter a world that's all scrap metal, dirty, dusty.
They're fighting below, they're fighting up in the deck, and the ship collapses, and it's the big finale moment.
Today we're at Amex, and it's like a big metal junkyard, and we're about to really get into like all of the action scenes and like when you really see her be a warhead and see that she's not just like an apathetic teenager.
She's the only one that really has effects tied to her. So we didn't want her to pop out in the movie as something unique and different from our world. So we really wanted to look at common military devices for creating explosions and then utilize the components of those to build her effect.
The scrapyard fight between Colossus and Angel Dust is especially complicated because you have a real actor who is fighting a guy who's standing in for the character, and also Gina would have to fight against thin air, basically do a double pass on every piece of action.
I've never done CGI fights before, so this is a whole different animal for me. I pretty much fight a ghost. It feels pretty awkward, but it's kind of like dancing by yourself.
She had to rehearse quite a bit and time out her movements so that he could be replaced with a CG character.
I think the coolest move that I've done, I'm on top of this like 6'8" man's shoulder, just punching down and then flipping. So it's all pretty cool.
We were very blessed with the fact that Gina was capable of doing that. Most actors wouldn't be.
It's all about body language. Whereas I'm a little bit more fluid, this is all just about stance. And so I usually like to see how my stunt double, Michelle, would do it. And then I'm like, okay, take bits and pieces and then like try to make it my own.
Because Angel Dust is involved in these battles, a digital double of her is created to facilitate the process of bringing the action of the CG Colossus together with her live performance.
Let's dance. And by dance, I mean let's try to kill each other.
On the flight deck, we had your standard favorite Дэдпул with two katanas slicing and dicing. Дэдпул feels the pain. Ajax doesn't. So there was a nice little battle that they had.
Aside from Ajax being such an interesting character, the physical side of this was a big part of the character. I started in London, training, doing strength and conditioning, so that when we got out here, we would be comfortable and ambidextrous with both of the axes for the final fight.
The flight deck is really the top of that aircraft carrier. We built a little section of the flight deck, and we elaborated that with moving gimbal pieces, which when there's a fight going on, we actually put the actors on a moving piece to give it sort of more of a tipping over sensation.
This is the first time I've had the opportunity to work on that, so we have a huge platform that can drop down in a second to, I think, a 25-degree angle, which feels quite steep when you're up on it, especially when it's raised, 30 foot in the air.
What we've got here is a tilted gimbal set connected with the punch bowl, a special effects track rig.
We're sliding down a platform, and simultaneously I'm climbing into the punch bowl, which is like basically a big glass capsule.
We've got stunts interacting with special effects as well as vis effects with all the green screen surrounding the area. So there's a lot of wire work, swinging around, and safety aspects that are involved in this entire shot.
I die.
Digital Domain took on the challenge of making an enormous, heavy metal structure collapse as realistically as possible without losing any weight or seeming too light.
We're talking a big, massive carrier crashing down, destroying everywhere, people on it, sliding off. Sometimes you're on the deck, sometimes you're away from the deck. All the physics that go with that, and then, of course, making it totally photoreal. So we really had to do a lot of work to make sure that all tied together.
You gotta have a big finale moment. You gotta have some eye candy. You gotta have some shit really getting crazy at the end.
Everyone thinks it's a full-time job. Wake up a hero, brush your teeth a hero, go to work a hero.
Colossus is this tender-hearted guy, and so when Ajax is killed, he's so sensitive that he has such a weak stomach. Tim initially said he wanted the throw-up to be bagels and coffee. Jonathan, our visual effects supervisor, wanted something more metallic, like nuts and bolts and things like that. So we found a happy compromise with somewhat of a more liquid metal kind of a throw-up.
Why?
You were droning on.
Tim was a real pleasure because he is coming to the director world from the world of animation and visual effects. Tim understands the level of detail and work that goes into every single shot.
This movie was made on a relatively modest budget, but it doesn't feel it because Tim knew how to get the most possible bang from every buck in terms of shooting the action and then rendering it in a computer where necessary.
We hope that the audience has just entered Дэдпул's world and enjoy what craziness he brought to the screen without thinking about what our effects look like, and that they just feel that they're in his world and don't even know that a lot of his world was not real.
The music that we're recording for this score, it jumps back and forth between traditional X-Men type score. The music that I made for Дэдпул that you guys will not be hearing is a mix between Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Miami Vice and Acid.
The score is done by Junkie XL, who's done everything from working with the biggest pop acts in the world to scores of great movies.
I was approached by Tim Miller, who actually bought one of my earlier records in the 90s when he was still a raver. And he heard that I got into film scoring and he was very keen to meet me. Tim said, I want to play you something. And then they played me the teaser for Comic-Con. And I was completely blown away about what I saw. It's a mix between action and comedy and serious drama, and it just goes back and forth. And I was really surprised, and especially how well they pulled it off. So that's why we started.
He brings this sort of pop culture, high energy, electronica feel to the film that will make it feel very modern.
I was immediately convinced that this character needed something really, really unique, something that you don't hear in films at this point. And my idea was to go back to the 80s and early 90s, where a lot of the reference music in this film also comes from. And I was able to create something really fast and frantic and violent for Дэдпул.
I love the scores of other more traditional superhero movies. I listen to them when I write. I grew up loving the Superman score and that theme, but this is so different. This is just a more anarchic, modern feeling type of music.
The freeway, just the whole opening sequence of the film. That's the first time we see Дэдпул. And so I take advantage of that first 8 minutes or so to establish the crazy music spectrum that goes with this crazy character.
Shit. Did I leave the stove on?
I established that really 80s sound completely over the top. The scene is so over the top at the same time. So when you hear these music elements against it, it has a really comical effect without being funny. Can we try something, Nick? Yeah. At 94, the start of 94, I'd like the basses to drop back to the note that was written originally in the score. The movie is packed with licensed music. There are like good 20 songs in there. So as a traditional composer, you don't have the same real estate to score themes and to develop the themes throughout a movie. And then when you play for just 4 seconds, I gotta stop because there's another joke. So I came up with a very simple riff, which is, if you would play it on a guitar, it's like down, 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 down. It's like a very simple riff. Now that riff is very recognizable, and I can play it for 3 seconds, and boom, I need to be out for a joke.
A hush falls over the crowd as rookie sensation Wade W. Wilson out of Regina, Saskatchewan lines up the shot.
All the cello on the melody, and then the bass doubles is an octave lower. So whatever the lower divisi cello was playing is not necessarily at the score. With Vanessa, I have really clear spots in the film where I can introduce a theme between her and Wade at the time when he's not Дэдпул yet. And I have enough room to develop that, and it comes back various spots in the film.
I love you.
Very good. We there? With Colossus and NTW, for their part of the score, I really rely on what people would describe a typical X-Men movie score. It's a hybrid between modern electronic sounds and fast-moving strings with noble brass lines. These guys are in it for the good. And then Ajax is a guy that went through the same school as Дэдпул to become another superhuman, but he has other capacities than Дэdpул has. And his sound and his thematics are more modern, clean, cold electronic sounds with a bit of orchestra on top of it. Ajax has a very clear melody that's played in the lower basses, and it comes back multiple times. It gets darker and grimmer throughout the film once it gets more clear what he's after and what he's doing.
You know, it's funny. Almost missed the fucker. I like a challenge.
All these characters come together, and it's one big arc that starts 75% into the movie, and it really takes you to the end of the movie. So it's a mishmash of everything. We swell way stronger in 152, 53.
Everyone thinks it's a full-time job.
The scene where Colossus hopes to convert Дэдпул into a real superhero. He says, only 4 or 5 moments.
That really matter. Moments when you're offered a choice.
And so he does this whole speech, and the music goes underneath it, exactly what you would expect, and it swells, and then the music goes to a certain harmony where you would expect, okay, now the music continues, and the story goes to a whole different area, and then Дэдпул decides to shoot the guy, and the music just stops right there.
The way we...
We're done, guys. What I really hope is that people walk out of the theater and that they remember a few scenes, that they put an extra smile on their face because the music emphasized what Дэdпул as a character is. In the end, we're in the serving industry. We need to make great music, but we need to make the picture greater. And that's why I love this business. So I really hope that some of these people go by the original score. When they hear a track back, it's like, oh, that's the reason why I got a bigger smile than I did normally.
I'm gonna give you a chance for y'all to lay down your firearms in exchange for preferential, bordering on gentle, possibly even lover-like treatment.
And I think the strength of Дэdпул is in its differences from the X-Men films, from all other films in the genre that we've seen.
As we've seen superhero movies become so predominant over the last 10, 15 years, the time is right to really kind of take the piss out of it.
Like 2 hobos fucking in a shoe filled with piss. I can go all day.
This was always meant to be an edgy film, and maybe during a time when everybody else was making PG or PG-13, more mass market versions of comic book films, it just seemed like an unnecessary bet. But I think now the genre of superhero and comic book films is wider, and it feels like maybe it's time to do a film like this that sort of pushes those boundaries out a little further.
I'd love a blowjob.
Oh, God, me too. He's so unconventional and so unpredictable. It's just so exciting in terms of where they can take Дэdпул from here, because the limits and possibilities of where he could pop up and the things that he could be involved in are endless.
Oh, giving him the business.
The character's such a great character. The tone is so unique. There's a lot more stories to tell and a lot more characters within the Дэdпул canon that we can put on screen. The hope is that it's the first of many Дэdпул movies.
At the end of the day, we occupy a space that no other comic book movie has or can. Fourth wall breaking, pop culture references, hyper violence mixed with hyper comedy.
Is it sexist to hit you? Is it more sexist to not hit you? I mean, the line gets real blurry.
It's a simple character to kind of figure out quite quickly. That makes him interesting to me, and it makes him sort of limitless.
See? You don't need to be a superhero to get the girl. Now, let's finish this epic wide shot, pull out. It's gonna be about the only thing that's pulling out tonight. Who doesn't love a happy ending, huh?
You bet on me to die.
Motherfucker. Some friend you are. Well, joke's on you. I'm gonna live to 102, then die, like the city of Detroit.
I'm sorry. I wanted to win money.
And cut.
Дэdпул is all about this character, Weasel. He's got glasses, but he's still really handsome, and you can tell he's sort of a pussy magnet, but more for cats. He's just a really caring, sweet guy. And Дэdpул goes through some sort of something where he goes from Wade Wilson into this person that can't die. And this really affects Weasel. When we watch Weasel go through that roller coaster of emotions, what does this mean to him?
What the shit?
Hear the music. Дэdpul is a guy that sort of walks that tightrope between good and bad.
Some kinds of anger can't be managed.
His morality is very gray. He usually ends up on the side of the good guys, but not always.
You're my hero.
No. That I ain't.
He's unlike any other character that you're going to see in the X-Men universe, or frankly, any comic book universe.
Дэdpul is tonally, the vibe, just a completely different kind of movie.
He's a gift to every writer who writes him because his voice is unique and very, very entertaining.
Come on. You gonna leave me all alone here with less angry Rosie O'Donnell?
so off-center and offensive to pretty much everybody across the board.
I've never said this, but don't swallow.
So refreshing and fun to do.
Every time that I've read the script, I laugh. And I've read the jokes like 5 times, and it's still funny.
Here we are, and we're making the movie, but we're also making the movie the right way, and that's kind of half the battle.
The fans kind of own the spirit of Дэдпул. They have co-opted him, and they hold him tight.
To see him getting done right on the big screen is very exciting.
Oh, sounds like your last Saturday night.
This is true to the comics. He's wearing the costume. He's behaving in a way that is in line with Дэдпул in the comics across the board.
3, 2, stupid! Worth it. We occupy a space that no other comic book movie has or can. I'm shocked that it took this long to get here, but I'm thankful for it.
Дэдпул is one of those films that transcends any medium. It's not even really a film. It's just the greatest story ever told with guns.
That sounds like a fucking franchise.
Okay, here we go.
B-Mark.
Back in 1991, the comic book landscape, I must say it, was dominated by Marvel. And they were looking around for new characters to use. And along came Дэдпул.
Time to make the chimmy fucking chongas.
Rob Liefeld's first issue, The New Mutants, he dropped down 3 characters into the book. One of them was a red and black clad mercenary who had a bunch of swords and a bunch of guns and a bunch of pouches, and he was gonna be fighting Cable, who was another big burly character who had a lot of guns and a lot of pouches.
Дэдпул was a mercenary with ties to the same program that created Wolverine. Wolverine had been referred to as Weapon X. So I called Marvel and I said, that's Roman numeral X, so that means 10, right? Has there been a Weapon 9? Have we seen the guy before? And they said no.
Дэдпул was always different than all the other X-Men, and different than really any other comic book, partly because he breaks the fourth wall, partly because the tone is so satirical.
This shit's gonna have nuts in it.
Rob wanted a challenge to Cable that was going to be different than the things Cable normally fights, which was other big burly men. Дэдпul was going to be a lot faster, a lot more acrobatic. And as far as his dialogue and how he would talk, Rob just said, whatever you want to do.
There was a movie called Twins with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And in my mind, Wolverine was Schwarzenegger and Дэдпul was the Danny DeVito character. And so in the comic book origin, they let me run with that.
Rob's original description notes is he wanted a mercenary by way of Spider-Man. So I thought to myself, all right, Spider-Man with the quips and the sarcastic attitude and all that, just make it a little darker. So I started to make him a wise ass. I made him sarcastic.
You big chrome cock gobbler!
That's not nice.
You really gonna fuck this up for me?
He could just as easily have been a throwaway character, but we started to get letters in. For the kids at home, a letter is something you write and put in an envelope and put a stamp on it and mail it. Normally for New Mutants, we'd get about this many letters. For New Mutants 98, which was Дэdpul's first issue, we got like this many letters. Over 75% of them, somewhere in the letter said, that guy was funny, bring him back.
When I started writing Дэdpul, we wanted to make sure that we put a lot of layers into him and that he would evolve over the course of time. I really saw Дэdpul as a nihilist on the surface. He acted like he didn't care, and he wanted to make sure that you knew he didn't care.
Pretending you're not here, Negasonic Teenage Warhead. Can we trade names?
So a lot of the humor came out of that.
So grabbing her and then maybe like putting my hand down like that.
Yeah, like you're trying to stop.
For me, the Дэdpul journey started in, I think it was about 2004, was when I first kind of heard about it. I was doing a movie for New Line Cinema at the time, and they brought it up to me, introduced me to the comics, sent a bunch of them over to me, and I read them, and I just kind of fell in love with that whole world.
X-Men Origins Wolverine came out, where Ryan first portrayed Дэdpul.
The version of Дэdpul in the Wolverine movie is very different than the Дэdpul of the comics.
The Wade Wilson part was interesting, and that was not too far off canon, but Дэdpul himself was not. I wouldn't even consider that a portrayal of the character. That was something else that happened to a guy named Wade Wilson.
Right after Wolverine Origins, Ryan Reynolds used his leverage to get Дэdpul optioned as its own film.
Whose balls did I have to fondle to get my very own movie?
When we had this opportunity to go back and make a Дэdpul movie, the most important intention of the film was to go back to the tone, the essence of the comics, and to make him the merc with a mouth.
Yeah, let's get it on.
People fall in love with characters for a reason, and a lot of times when they make movies, the filmmakers change quintessential elements of the character. I don't want to do that.
One of the things we come back to as comic book fans and readers is character and tone, because story changes from issue to issue, but character and tone remain pretty consistent.
Tim's interpretation, along with Ryan's, of Deadpool is so head-on. It's very true to the character. And with a guy like Ryan playing the lead, it has all the appeal and all the charisma that this character has and needs and exhibits all the time.
Did you just put a gift card in your mouth?
There's some things we couldn't do that I'm sure the fans will miss. Like Deadpool has multiple personalities. It's pretty easy to do that in the comics because you see different colored thought bubbles. It's pretty hard to do on film without making it completely confusing. So that's one of the things I'd like to explore. Maybe there's a way to do that if we're so fortunate as to do another film.
Morning, sleepyhead.
Freaks like old lady pants in here. There's sort of like a Deadpool core creative collective that has managed this for the last 6 years, and that's Tim Miller, that's Rhett Reese, that's Paul Wernick, and me as well. We've just been sort of developing it slowly but surely over those years.
Our agent presented us with a comic and said that Fox is gonna try and reinvent the character after what happened with Wolverine.
I'm gonna do this the old-fashioned way, with 2 swords and maximum effort.
Deadpool's a character that really spoke to us. He's a very complex anti-hero, caught in a shame spiral, self-deprecating, kind of self-loathing, and they say, you know, write what you know, so we really latched onto it.
We originally pitched a non-origin story, interestingly, just a Deadpool adventure. And we pitched to Ryan Reynolds, and he enjoyed the pitch, but he was pretty emphatic about the fact that it had to be an origin story. So ultimately what happened was we kind of melded the two.
If you think about it, it's a Canadian mercenary with lead pipe cruelty, and he's morally flexible, and he's got cancer, and he's hideously scarred. And these are all sort of items that a lot of studios wouldn't necessarily be anxious to put up on the screen.
Looks are everything. You ever heard David Beckham speak? It's like he mouth sexed a can of helium. Think Ryan Reynolds got this far on his superior acting method?
Ryan Reynolds, as the ambassador of Deadpool, is just winning the fans over every day. Every day. He just gets it. He's got that rogue, badass quality. He's just got that lip. He's just so quick with the quips. He was like sexiest man in the world. He has a huge female following.
My freshman year of high school, I may or may not have photoshopped myself into a picture with Ryan. I was really obsessed with Ryan for a good while. Like, his name is on, like, the walls in my childhood room. Like, they graffiti Ryan Reynolds.
Brianna mentioned that she used to have Photoshop pictures of me. Yeah, she did mention something about that. And then we awkwardly moved past it.
Ryan was born to play this role. His personality and his DNA is really infused in this character.
This character of Deadpool was just made from heaven for Ryan Reynolds, or Ryan was made for it. Either way, there is something about Deadpool that accesses the entire range of Ryan Reynolds. The comedy, the romance, the action, things that most actors, when they're lucky, can do 1 or maybe 2 of. But Ryan actually does have the ability to do all of those things.
Red really is my color.
He's got this boy next door, nice guy look about him, and he really is that guy. He's literally the nicest guy I've ever met. But he's also nasty.
This isn't a duplex. It's chlamydia holding still.
Was that improv?
There, sir.
God. He's got this sort of edgy bit of humor that is very 12-year-old juvenile kid in a locker room.
People say, kiss the girl, crack a joke, and shoot a gun. And Deadpool/Wade does all those things in the movie, and Ryan does too.
Yeah, like I got bit by a radioactive Shar-Pei.
In issue number 2 of Cable and Deadpool, which came out in 2004, I had Deadpool describe himself as looking like a Shar-Pei crossed with Ryan Reynolds. Boo! So I feel like I actually originally cast Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool.
Andre, kick half a step to your left. A regular person half a step.
When Tim came on, we just knew from right at the beginning he was the perfect guy for this. He got the comic book world. He understands it. He lives in that world.
Tim just kind of has a bit of that Wade Wilson acerbic attitude in him, and he sort of speaks, moves, and talks like that. And I think it really helped him access the character, and he really kind of understood the character.
You see it in the wide. The shot that we've got lined up now, you see the swords in their position.
When Tim came in, Fox wanted Tim to prove that he could make this movie, essentially.
You know, a guy who doesn't have any film credits, that's like trying to get a credit card for the first time without having any credit. It's tough. So you have to show them in some way. You have to give them some sort of living, breathing, three-dimensional proof.
So what he did was he took the fight inside the SUV, which was in the screenplay, and he created a 2-minute piece that captured that fight from start to finish. And it was just phenomenal.
Let's hope these guys are wearing their brown pants.
It was a proof of concept both in terms of the techniques that he wanted to use in order to make this film, which were pretty revolutionary. But on top of that, it really encapsulated the spirit of Deadpool, the tone, the comedy, and Ryan's voice.
Hola! Me llamo Piscina de la Muerta. Test footage was never meant for the eyes of anyone other than studio executives at Fox, and was meant to just be a loose example of what we could do with this character and how we could kind of bring him to life.
It didn't convince Fox at the time to make the movie, so it sat there for a long time.
The writers, Paul Wernick and Rhett Reese, and the director, Tim Miller and Ryan, reached out to me directly. The title of the email was Deadpool Needs Your Ass, and then inside the email it said assistance, completing the word ass. Will you reach out to the studio and give us some support?
There have been a lot of talk about, can you even do an X-Men movie that is R-rated rather than PG-13? And I know that they wanted to be able to protect the tone of Deadpool, but still see if you could do a slightly softer version.
Oh, I'm touching myself tonight.
So there were just more months or even years that went by without the movie getting made.
In the middle of Comic-Con, I think it was 2 years ago, Tim was at Comic-Con, and as he was driving home, the footage somehow leaked.
And the internet did what it does at its best, which is it blew up.
It showed people that it's possible to put Deadpool on the screen the right way, and to put Deadpool on the screen in a way that is totally congruent with the comic. And that really created an uprising to some degree.
It ended up becoming a real rallying cry for the fans out there when they saw exactly what Tim and Ryan were trying to do.
The noise they made on social media was huge. It was huge for us, and they made enough noise for long enough that it didn't feel like a moment in time or a little bit of a fad. They sustained that roar for months.
I think the fans being overwhelmingly supportive of this take on the character, which is different than past takes on the character, really helps the studio feel like they're making the right decision when they okay a film like this, because it's risky.
There's a very short list of suspects who might have leaked it on the internet. Paul and I are probably on that list, but we did not do it.
When the test footage did leak, we all called each other, own up, we won't tell anyone. And I was like, no. So I still bust Tim's balls saying that he's the one that leaked the test footage, but he swears that's not true.
I think it's just one of those things where you want to connect with the fans early on. So the fans really made me feel comfortable with what we were planning to do.
There's a huge fan base already built in for Deadpool. They're the reason we're here making this movie. And I don't say that in any sort of hyperbolic way. That's a fact. They've been the largest catalyst to us making Deadpool.
Everyone on this Deadpool team really understands that world and the tone that we're trying to get, and I think it's a rare thing.
All of us are on set every minute of the day, and we've all been here watching this thing come to life slowly but surely. Jeremy, I belong to a group of guys who take a dime to beat a fella down. And little Megan, she's not made of money, but lucky for her, I got a soft spot.
We start the movie, at least chronologically, we start it with him as Wade Wilson, as a mercenary for hire.
And that's why we do it, but mostly the money.
Who does not have superpowers, and then he gets terminal cancer.
Wade is diagnosed with cancer at a time in his life where he's trying to become a better man, and he's found love in his life in Vanessa. He runs out of options and turns to Ajax to heal himself.
Please don't make the super suit green or animated.
And ultimately comes out on the other end a broken man with a scarred face and this unbelievable power of being able to regenerate and basically be immortal.
We established Wade Wilson as quite congruent with the comic canon as well, which is that he's a bit of a douchebag. Oral fixation? Just a big Stallone fan. He's also a guy that is incredibly physically capable.
¿Dónde está Francesca? He is an overgrown child. He is a romantic. He's a motor mouth.
I don't take the shits, I just disturb them.
He is a lunatic. You combine all those things and you've got a pretty interesting character to draw from.
He's the kind of guy you kind of want to punch in the face a couple times.
I deserve that. That too.
And then maybe have sex with him.
It's really the humor. He's just so crazy. That's what people respond to most.
Oh!
Oh, and that's why Regina rhymes with fun.
Because the movie is an origin story, we always thought we have to kind of address how did he get named Deadpool.
All you need now is a suit and a nickname, like Wade the Wisecracker or Scare Devil.
A Deadpool is a betting pool on to see who is going to die first. And so in Sister Margaret's, they all bet on individuals who they think are going to die first, and they're sitting around the bar. And he's this broken man who now has all these powers, and he's looking for a name.
I put all my money on you, and now I just realized I'm never gonna win the
Deadpool.
Captain Deadpool.
One of the traditions of Deadpool from the comics is that he kind of exists in his own meta-narrative where he's aware of the fact that he's in the comic, that he comments on the fact that he's in the comic.
You ever see 127 Hours? Spoiler alert. Because of that, it makes him a little bit dangerous. He can say or do anything in that world. It's actually given us a great freedom to be able to tell a story in a totally unorthodox way. It's a big house. It's funny that I only ever see two of you. It's almost like the studio couldn't afford another X-Men.
It's one of those moments in the film that is breaking the fourth wall, exposing the process of making movies to the audience. It's pretty radical and something that the audience loves.
So he can call upon Ryan Reynolds if he wants. He can talk about Hugh Jackman. He's got a nice pair of smooth criminals down under. He can talk about any kind of person that orbits that X-Men universe, and I think it's fun. Finish fucking her the fuck up!
Language, please!
Suck a cock!
So we really pushed it pretty far and where we could kind of take the piss out of people, because that's really who Deadpool is.
There are different reasons for all the characters. There's some that were choices of the writers and I and Ryan, and some that were choices because they're part of canon.
I've played a lot of roles. Damsel in distress ain't one of them.
Vanessa is played by Morena Baccarin, and she's brilliant and sexy and dangerous and broken, much like Wade is broken.
Something like 400 people auditioned for that role, and she just embodied it better than anyone we'd seen right from the get-go. She just kind of had that attitude and that confidence.
When Morena came in, it was one of those things where you just instantly could feel the chemistry between the two of them. And not only was it sexual chemistry, but there was actually comedic chemistry as well.
I'm 6'2". I'm 6'2".
You're freakishly tall.
No, you're 5'8", I think.
Really?
You have a 5'8" face.
Okay.
We really didn't want to write her in that typical kind of femme fatale sort of way. We wanted to have her be somebody who totally owns her space and her character, and somebody who isn't that damsel in distress at any moment in the movie.
Yeah.
Say the magic words, fat Gandalf.
I'm sorry.
Vanessa is a very witty, very sharp survivor. She comes from a pretty tough background, as Wade does, and I think their relationship is really founded on their mutual difficulties in the past.
Ever had a cigarette put out on your skin?
Where else do you put one out?
I lost my line. Vanessa and Wade meet in a bar. It's literally a girl walks into a bar moment. She's loving the fact that he's so funny and charismatic and can go right there with her and not be afraid of who she is and what she's saying.
They don't love each other despite their flaws. They love each other because of their flaws. And we feel like they're a really, really good match, those two.
Will you, stick it?
Marry me?
Where were you hiding that?
Nowhere.
Vanessa Carlyle, who's also a copycat, a mutant, is also part of canon. We didn't want to make up a new person, but we also didn't want to bog down the story with dealing with her powers. We'll save that for another time, hopefully.
Here, this is Vanessa. What? Oh, no, wait, it's Francis. He wants you to come to him.
What is that?
That's the shit emoji. You know, it's the turd with the smiling face and the eyes. I thought it was chocolate yogurt for so long.
Weasel being his best friend is T.J. Miller. That's part of canon. It's in there, and there was a really natural place to put that into the script.
He's an arms dealer, and he also owns the bar Sister Margaret's School for Wayward Girls, where Wade frequents and is a mercenary bar that's kind of underground and only mercenaries know about it. He is looking out for number one, loves money and guns.
Drinks on me, soldiers of fortune!
Domestic, nothing important.
He's a foil for Deadpool. Deadpool just wreaks havoc on anybody in his orbit, and Weasel's one of those guys. I'm very excited about Weasel because of T.J. Miller. He's just such an awesome fit as Weasel.
T.J. Miller is one of the funniest people on the planet, and he is a fountain of great ideas and great lines. So when you bring him onto a set, he will, in 10 different takes, give you 10 different funny lines right off the top of his head.
You are hard to look at. You look like an avocado. Had sex with an older, more disgusting avocado. Yeah. Not gently, like it was hate fucking. You look like Freddy Krueger face-fucked a topographical map of Utah. You look like the inside of other people's assholes. You will die alone.
That'll do.
We don't have 2 takes that match in this whole film, which is incredible. One of the great sadnesses is that we can't include all of them.
I'm doing shirt no pants with the mustard stain on the shirt, toddler style. I got to improvise a lot. And the writers, Rhett and Paul, they had ideas, and Ryan is very funny, so yeah, it was pretty fun. And actually found out later that all the peanuts were free. So I was eating a lot of the bar peanuts, and I thought I'd have to pay for them at some point. You know, I got money, I did Yogi Bear 3D, but the peanuts were all free, so I wish I had eaten more.
Salsa, water, and lemon for blood. Or wear red. Don't ask.
And then there's Blind Al, who's his blind roommate, elderly roommate, who he lives with and abuses, and she also dishes it right back to him as well. So they have this kind of really sick, tormented love-hate relationship throughout the film.
Screw, please.
Here? Now? Just kidding. I know it's been decades.
You'd be surprised.
She had to be blind because of the way he felt about his appearance. He would not live with somebody who could look at him all the time. And that was really critical to the character.
Blind Al is played by Leslie Uggams, who is a phenomenal actress and singer and Broadway performer. And it was amazing how much she committed to playing this really kind of insane character.
God, I miss cocaine. She's old, but she's feisty.
Hey, careful with that Ronnie Millsap. We're downrange.
She's got a lot of oomph, and she doesn't let her blindness stop her from doing things. It's like Abbott and Costello, you know, their relationship. They're perfect together.
Hashtag drive-by.
She can't see him, but she seems to know who he is better than just about anybody in the whole film. And she has no compunctions of really just sticking a dagger inside him emotionally.
Oh, down, 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 down.
Fuck you.
I'm about to do to you what Limp Bizkit did to music in the late 90s. Dad?
Ow. And then you have characters like Colossus, who is in the X-Men world. He's a perfect straight man, which is why the writers chose him originally.
Colossus is sort of the Jiminy Cricket of the movie. He's the conscience that is on Wade's shoulder. It was very important for Tim to have an accurate portrayal of Colossus and to play him as Russian, which is one of his signature characteristics from the comics.
I've given Дэдпул every chance to join us, but he'd rather act like a child. A heavily armed child.
He's got a little bit of difficulty with the English language, which is fun.
My chrome penis friend back there has agreed to do me this solid. In exchange, I said that I would consider joining his boy band.
It's not boy band.
Colossus is the goody two-shoes. He's the defender of the universe and all that is good in the universe. And when Дэдпул comes in and creates waves, Colossus wants to stop that.
You'll recover, Wade. You always do.
The relationship between Colossus and Nega, Sonic Teenage Warhead, is like a waiter and his trainee. Colossus is teaching NTW the ropes, and she's this typical teenager who's just so unhappy to be here.
Can we go?
Look! I'm a teenage girl. I'd rather be anywhere than here.
Teenage girls tend to be too cool for school, and so we thought it would be really fun to make Negasonic Teenage Warhead super cool and unimpressed by anyone and anything. And that bothers Дэдпул. It gets under his skin. The fact that he can't impress her, A, that he can't make her laugh, B, and that she's just not tolerant of his BS.
Ripley from Alien 3.
Fuck, you're old.
Ah, fake laugh, hiding real pain.
Brianna's deadpan delivery is just amazing. It's so funny and it plays perfectly off the manic energy of Ryan. So the contrast between the two of them, I think, makes for really, really funny scenes.
Oh no, finish your tweet.
She gets out all of her angst by running and exploding at things.
Oh, I so pity the dude who pressures her into prom sex.
We tweaked her powers a little bit. In the comics, she can see the future, I think, 3 days ahead, and she's sort of a disturbed youth. We tweaked her powers so she actually explodes like a human warhead, and we had to ask permission from Marvel to do that, which they were gracious and allowed us to do that.
When we meet them, they're actually in the X-Mansion, and you realize that Colossus has sort of been trying to convince him to join the X-Men. And Дэдпул not only has no interest in joining the X-Men, but takes great pleasure in telling Colossus all the reasons why they're ridiculous and kind of embarrassing.
Look, Colossus, I don't have time for the goody two-shoes bullshit right now.
And then Дэdпул comes to try to recruit them to help him get Vanessa back from Ajax.
Wade Wilson!
Ooh, I'm gonna fucking spell it out for you.
Ajax is a bad guy of the movie. He's the brains behind the operation. He's lost all his nerve endings, so he doesn't feel, and he's trying to create super slaves.
You still think we're making you a superhero? Little secret, Wade. This workshop doesn't make superheroes. We make super slaves. What the fuck is wrong with you?
He himself went through this same process at one point. They took any good that was left in him and they beat it out of him through this torture process.
The way that I've approached Ajax has always been more to do with an absence of conscience rather than he's inherently evil, rather than there's anything bad about him.
He really took this role incredibly seriously. What's amazing about him, he's actually one of the sweetest, nicest guys you'll ever meet, but as soon as he gets on screen, he is a terrifying dude.
You grow back body parts now, Wade. When I'm finished, parts will have to grow back you.
He's been such a fun character to play. He really has, and I live my life very positive and peaceful, and it's been great fun being the absolute opposite as Ajax.
Woo! Superhero landing! Yeah, that's really hard on your knees.
Angel dust we added because I wanted somebody who was visually spectacular, and I simply wanted a strong female presence in the film. We needed an opponent for Colossus, and I thought she had the right power set, and she was a cool character, so we rolled her in there.
Aren't you a little strong for a lady? I'm calling Wang.
She kind of gets picked up by Ajax, and he teaches her how to live, how to function, and he becomes just basically everything to her.
Gina brings this really unique physicality to the role and menace, and is a really formidable adversary for our intrepid crew.
Gina Carano is badass. Her eyes are so piercing and direct and strong.
Interestingly, in real life, Gina is very delicate and shy, not at all like the persona that you see in the movie.
We have a great cameo from Stan Lee in our film, and I guarantee you it is at a location that he would never be at in any other Marvel film ever.
Coming onto our stage right now, give it up for Chastity!
I think he had more fun than just about anybody you could possibly imagine that day.
When I did my scene and Tim Miller directed it, I didn't even know I was working. That's how effortlessly he makes it seem.
This is going to be very different for the fans.
This may change my whole career.
I think it will.
My only problem is, after that, I never did get to see Chastity. I mean, I'm heartbroken. Here I'm yelling to everybody, let's give it up for Chastity. And I hope I wasn't lying. I hope she was worth giving it up for.
Ladies and gentlemen, a picture wrap on Stan Lee. Everyone, Stan Lee.
And for everybody in this film, they went into the movie knowing it was a superhero movie and knowing that it was based on a comic book. A lot of the characters in comics and in superhero movies take themselves very seriously. And Дэдпул is almost the opposite.
Fourth wall break inside a fourth wall break. That's like 16 walls.
And so for the actors, it was this opportunity to play, to be mischievous, to be R-rated, to be dirty.
Or stay. We could next level this shit.
To poke fun at all the things that traditionally these movies take very seriously. So it was just really fun to watch.
We should cut.
Hands.
The stylization of the film is all about the character Deadpool. He has a skewed view on reality, but it's not affecting the way other people view reality.
The douchebag does think you're dead, right?
Yeah.
That's good. You should keep it that way.
What, like wear a mask?
Yes, a very thick mask, all the time.
This is the movie in which he builds the suit for the first time, puts the swords on, straps on guns, and becomes this kind of crazed, comedic, wisecracking character.
Tell me where your fucking boss is, or you're gonna die in 5 minutes!
Deadpool costume is something that is vitally important to this character. I mean, it's one of the most recognizable superhero costumes.
The Deadpool look in the comics is very gritty and visceral. We researched all the various designs of Deadpool. Some of the costume designs are way too simple, some that are just way over the top. So we just had to find something that worked in the real world.
When you're talking about a superhero suit, it can go terribly wrong, which we reference a few examples of.
It's something that Ryan and Tim and everybody took incredibly seriously. And having the authenticity and the fine detail was crucial.
We had about 10 weeks to create the suit from scratch, and that includes finalizing the design, making all the choices for fabric and color and details, all the layering of the suit, and then we sculpt in clay and or 3D model on the computer. Then you have to make molds and cast parts and do lots of samples to get everything looking right. And then, of course, fabricating the costume itself.
There was a sort of dual process happening, which was on the one hand, we were building this super cool red superhero suit. On the other hand, we were making it look dirtier, uglier, the opposite of what you would normally do with a superhero costume.
Finding the right red, that was pretty huge. It's tricky because what looks good in person is not always right for camera. And because we're in the day of social media and fans taking pictures everywhere, it has to look good on set. For post-production, if the color's muted already, it's very difficult to make it bright enough. So we had to come up with something in between that worked really good. We dye the fabric a certain color, and then when we print on top of it, it changes the whole tone of the color. So it's not a specific hue, it's just Deadpool red.
Is the mask muffling my voice?
It's all about the hero shot, right? So the mask was extremely crucial for us. We started sculpting the mask even before we were awarded the project. It was that important to me to get that right because that's everything. And the shape of the eyes, getting that expression in a static mask was super important. That in-your-face, aggressive, look out, here I am kind of thing. That's him, that's Deadpool. We digitally scan Ryan and start with his head, and then we sculpt on top of that.
The mask is pretty important because there's a ton of dialogue that's underneath the mask.
There's so many little subtle things, how tall the head is, how skinny the jawline is, the shape of the eyes, that's all huge. So we sculpt that in clay, and then we digitize that, scan it, and 3D print it. And then from there, you make the parts that are underneath, and you make the fabric suit. So you have sculptors, mold makers, 3D modeling people, costume fabricators, so it's a big process. We have to build things in there so that he can breathe and the sweat isn't causing a problem. All those things were a concern. This is one of the Deadpool masks, completely finished out. We created it so that the eye pieces can come out separately. There's a release mechanism button in the back. Push it, pull the eyes. And we have different types of eyes for specific stunts that you can see better through, get more air, and you can exchange them on the fly. We knew from the get-go that he was going to have to be extremely mobile. Huge stunts, parkour flips, and all this craziness. So from the very beginning, it had to be stretch fabrics. And so the trick is to create stretch fabrics that don't look like a yoga suit, spandex. Ryan's suit, basically hero suit, fits him perfectly. There were two main stunt guys on the film. One guy was more for like the hard hits and the flying and that kind of thing. And another one who did gymnastics and parkour flipping. So they each had their specific suits. For the stunts, the suit has contained within it pouches, basically, so you can put pads in specific areas, protection for your elbows and knees and that kind of thing.
We took great pains to conceal it from the world so that we could unveil it with an incredible bearskin rug photo.
I hope the fans go in and they're blown away by how cool and aggressive the suit is, and then I hope they forget about it and just watch the movie and enjoy it.
So fucking gnarly. His character's in a shame spiral. He's been hideously deformed. He's covered head to toe in scars. He's kind of hideous to look at.
The disfigured version of Wade was hugely important and really hard to nail.
Дэдпул is portrayed as everything from like slightly scarred to massively mutated, rotting corpse when he pulls off the mask, dripping skin and huge holes in his head. And of course, we had the fine line to walk where we had Ryan Reynolds.
Looks like someone lost his shot. I'm coming, King.
What have you done to me? You need to make him disfigured enough that it motivates the whole back half of the movie where he's just trying to actually get his face back in many ways. But you don't want to make him so grotesque that the audience can't look at him. So it's this really tricky balance of making it tragic, but not too grotesque.
We did multiple full makeup tests and designs, trying to come up with not just a guy who's scarred or disfigured, but a character, because you want to create something that fans are going to want to make themselves up as, a poster on the wall or makeup kit for Halloween.
When he's first transformed, it's at its worst and bubbling and disgusting, and then it settles into that scarred face.
It's this raw, kind of enhanced version of what he will later become, which is great, fun, because it gives us a transition.
I am sorry, you are haunting. Your face is the stuff of nightmares.
Like a testicle with teeth.
It's a series of silicone prosthetics to retain a lot of Ryan. It's a very thin prosthetic. There's like 10 on his head. And I wanted to keep a very translucent quality to it. So there's a lot of light really affects it, just like skin, where you could maybe see the muscles and blood and the tissue underneath.
Oh, it feels super weird what you just did there.
When Ryan is in the Дэдпул makeup, he comes in and the first thing we do is glue all his hair down and we put like a little cap on him to cover like the bulk of his hair on top. And then what I do is I paint an entire, almost like a musculature and skull structure on his own skin, because every little detail that I put underneath shows through to the surface. And I have a team of guys helping me hours ahead of time, painting all these pieces to make them look really amazing. And then when we put them on Ryan, 90% of the job is done. And you're just kind of gluing it all on, and then you kind of tie it all together just to get him into his head. It's like a 3-hour process. When you get into the full body, you're talking about like 7 hours. It's a long process. Luckily, we don't have to do it too many times.
Someone's not counting. 6.
The great thing about an R rating is it gives you a little bit more freedom. You don't have to really hold back, and you can show what needs to be shown. That being said, there are movies that are like bloody for bloody's sake. This is not that. It's more about the humor.
Really? Rolling up the sleeves?
He's killing and stabbing people. It's happening so quick. You're more concentrating on him and what he's doing than the after effects. But bottom line is, I want the fans to be happy. I want Tim to be happy. I want Ryan to be happy. But you want the fans who love this stuff. I want to hear them go like, wow, that's really cool.
For a second there, it felt like we were 3 mini-lion robots coming together to form one super robot.
Part of the comic that people love, and I've always loved, is that he references pop culture. He is like a aficionado of pop music, movies, TV, other comic books, his own comic book. And that was something that was really important to all of us to capture in the film.
Дэdпул has kind of like an unlimited pop culture canon at his disposal at any moment. And I think that's what makes him interesting for me.
Don't make the same mistakes I did. Got it?
Yeah.
Or else the whole world tastes like Mama June after hot yoga.
There's not a specific rule about what are the things that he refers to. They are just things that just feel like Дэdпул.
Nice to see you, Jared. I'll take a foot long.
He loves and hates pretty much everything, and it's a huge part of the way he sees the world and the way he speaks about the world.
And that is why, in my opinion, the movie Cocoon is pure pornography.
From the very beginning, Tim had some strong ideas about how he wanted to see Deadpool's world, and he wanted to stay away from the usual superhero comics where they've always been kind of slick and glossy and hyper-tech and very hyper-stylized.
In our initial discussions, Tim and I said that it was very important that it felt like this world that Deadpool lives in is this sort of grimy, overcast environment.
Instead of having to build these really big elaborate sets, we just sort of went into the downtrodden, industrial, gritty parts of Vancouver and made it sort of fit the story that we're trying to tell.
When it comes time to licking wounds, there's no place like home.
Deadpool's apartment should be on Hoarders, you know, because he's got everything in there.
Deadpool's life was interesting. It was an extension of his character. He had to kind of represent who he was, what kind of went on in his mind and his psyche, and kind of represent his kind of dual nature.
It's a little bit like Wade himself. It's overcrowded with tchotchkes, almost like his brain exploded onto the walls.
I would maybe describe it as crack house chic.
Which is like a really cool little like apartment shithole somewhere. It's like a lot of like old WWE characters showing up here and there. A lot of guns, a lot of ammo. It's a pretty cool set.
I was gonna spend the night assembling the bougie, but this is holding my interest.
I told you, we're going with the Urdvash, not the Bjorsha. Get it through your head or get out of fucktown.
Shit.
We thought it was a really fun idea to play with this idea of IKEA being furniture you have to build, and a blind woman building it is even funnier.
Let's face it, I have trouble with IKEA furniture trying to put it together, because you always wind up with either 3 screws that, why do I have 3 screws? I'm supposed to use all these screws, or you don't have enough screws. Duh.
There's a few different kind of key locations for the film. There's Sister Margaret's, which is a local bar kind of establishment that mainly deals with mercenaries and other kind of ne'er-do-wells that inhabit this world.
The drinks are not on Wade. Use the money for sex, not for friendship.
Sister Margaret's is actually a very difficult location. We were trying to find a traditional dive bar, biker hangout, and we had a hard time in Vancouver trying to find that kind of place. So we ended up finding kind of a modern, hip joint that we really had to take down a few notches.
We have the workshop, which is the quote-unquote hospital that Wade ends up in when he's dying of cancer and thinks he's going there to be rehabilitated or given help, but in fact, that's where he's tortured.
Tim was not interested in doing the high-tech scientific laboratory. He thought this would be kind of a rogue operation. It'd be something that was ad hoc and put together from bits and pieces. So these guys would have found a abandoned warehouse somewhere with no electricity and brought what they needed to make it work.
This place seems sanitary.
My first request is warmer hands. Oh, and Jesus, a warmer table.
We found an old warehouse in Vancouver that we turned into even more distressed and run down and dirty. The exact opposite of a clean hospital, the kind of place you wouldn't want to go for any kind of health care.
It's so funny, everybody walks on set and is like, wow, it's really gloomy in there. And I walk on set, me and Ed, we're like, oh, this is our home.
There's the strip club. Of course there's a strip club, which was an amazing day. It was just a bunch of nude girls all day long walking around. They're really not shy.
For the first time really on this film, I'm very happy.
The fun thing about it was after scouting the location, Tim thought, well, why don't I just keep it as it is? So this actually is the real location used with its real name, with the actual bartender and the actual girls.
The scrapyard where a huge battle takes place.
In the script, it was described as a shipwrecking yard. Tim drew inspiration from the shipbreakers in Malaysia, and he went something very big in scale. We had a hard time finding an actual location that had all the elements that Tim wanted. So we ended up finding a lifting yard that we end up bringing all our own scrap to. What we end up doing is I'm bringing 30 truckloads of scrap, boats and planes and helicopters and buses, and we end up creatively organizing them, trying to build them up and make it look like an actual junkyard.
There was a realism to the film, something that was important to Tim, and I think helps differentiate the film from maybe more sort of poetic, stylized versions of superheroes.
I want it to be believable. I want people to feel like they're watching a real story. To me, that allows me as a viewer to identify with the characters in the film. And I think that's the way this movie is handled.